unless anyone has any specific crazy things you want me to talk about today, I figured maybe on a Mythology Monday we'll actually read some mythology. It has been known to happen, but I'm not above tangents. Where did we leave off? Well, friends, we left off with Aeneas in the underworld. He's talked to a bunch of people. Remember, the Sibyl told him how to get there. He had to get the golden bow. Press passes. I think we've covered most of the press pass industry. Exhibitors passes. Now that's a whole separate story, but I'll save that for a future stream. And he's got the golden bow. He found out all of the sacrifices he had to make. One of his own people had to die because you can't really get to the underworld without a human dying in some way, even if it's not you. Somebody's got to die for somebody else to be able to go down there. He goes down. He talks to people. We get some really cool geography of the underworld as far as where the different rivers are and who goes where in the underworld, depending on how you died, what kind of person you were before you died. And Aeneas sees... Well, first of all, he sees Dido, right? Queen Dido, who has just committed suicide. He didn't even know that. He's sad. She won't talk to him. He understands. And then we left off at the point where Aeneas has seen people being punished in the underworld. Humans, titans, etc. And again, when we talk about the great punishments that happen in the underworld, what are the ones that come to mind? Usually it's Sisyphus, Tantalus, characters like that. And there's a tradition to call them sinners, which is... I've talked about this before, but it's a handy term to use because people will get it, but it's also such a... sinning is such a Christian specific term that has so much loaded onto it that it's not really the right word, but it's probably close enough. Okay, and we continue. Oh, he did more ritual to get to the next place because he's going from the bad part of the underworld to a little bit of a nicer part. Now that at last this ritual was performed, his duty to the goddess done, they came to places of delight, to green parkland, where souls take ease amid the blessed groves. Wider expanses of high air endow each vista with a wealth of light. Souls here possess their own familiar sun and stars. Some train on grassy rings, others compete in field games, others grapple on the sand. Feet moving to a rhythmic beat, the dancers group in a choral pattern as they sing. Orpheus, the priest of Thrace, in his long robe accompanies, plucking his 7 notes now with his fingers, now with his ivory quill. Here is the ancient dynasty of Teucer, heroes high of heart, beautiful scions born in greater days. Ilus, Assaracus, and Dardanus, who founded Troy. Aeneas marvels to see their chariots and gear far off, all phantom, lances fixed in earth, all teams unyoked, at graze on the wide plain. So here already we can see this section of the underworld, it's a lot different. People aren't milling about, sad, waiting to get to the next place. They're not suffering, they're not in pain, but they actually have a shadow of their former lives. They know who they are, which is a big deal. They're playing, they're exercising, they're doing all sorts of fun stuff. He saw how vividly along the grass to right and left others who feasted there and chorused out a hymn praising Apollo with a fragrant laurel grove where Po sprang up and took his course to the world above. That's the river Po. The broad stream flowing on amid the forest. Here we actually, there's a note there that they can smell here in this part of the underworld. we talk about the shades of the dead, and that's a pretty accurate description for the Greek underworld. The Greeks considered that when normal people died, your average person, your shade, your spirit went to the underworld, and it was pretty crappy. Your shade was a vague, dim echo of who you were as a person. Barely any personality, barely any memories, just to sort of wander around the underworld for the rest of time. It wasn't really something to look forward to in any way. And this is just one of the many, many ways that the game Hades, I think, does a really good job of representing Greek mythology. If you've played the game or if you've seen it, especially in the lobby area, whatever, the home of the main characters, you go around and you talk to several like iconic heroes, but then other than that, they're a bunch of just little spirits wandering around, and they're faceless. They don't have bodies. You don't talk to them. They don't talk to you. They just sort of float around, and that's a pretty good depiction of what the Greeks thought the underworld was like for most people. Now, if you were a great person, either a hero or a politician, if you were great and famous, or if you were great and infamous, then you would bring some of your personality with you to the underworld. Sometimes you'd be punished, sometimes you'd be celebrated, but it took really amazing deeds and a really, really strong personality to have any sort of life in the underworld. And here again, we see people who are actually happy and remember their lives, and they can even smell, so they have their senses. This was the company of those who suffered wounds in battle for their country, those who in their lives were holy men and chaste, or worthy of Phoebus in prophetic song, or those who bettered life by finding out new truths and skills, or those who to some folk by benefactions made themselves remembered. So they talk to some people. They gather around Aeneas and they say, "Tell us, happy souls," let's see. Okay, so they find somebody to talk to, and they ask him, "Hey, you're a great seer. What region holds Anchises? Where is his resting place? For him we came by ferry across the rivers of Erebus." And then the great soul answers, "None of us has one fixed home. We walk in shady groves and bed on river banks and occupy green meadows fresh with streams. But if your hearts are set upon it, first cross this ridge, and soon I shall point out an easy path." So that's cool. In the underworld, you don't have like a house. You can just wander around, relax wherever you want. Everywhere's soft to lay down to sleep. Again, in this part of the underworld, very specifically. So they go walking along. Now Aeneas' father, Anchises, deep in the lush green of a valley, had given all his mind to a survey of souls, till then confined there, who were bound for daylight in the upper world. So now we get another aspect of the underworld. The unborn, souls who are waiting to go up to earth, which is a little bit different. By chance, his own were those he scanned now, all his own descendants, with their futures and their fates, their characters and acts. But when he saw Aeneas advancing toward him on the grass, he stretched out both his hands in eagerness as tears wetted his cheeks. So again, he has emotion, he has life, which is special for those in the underworld. He said in welcome, "Have you at last come? Has that loyalty your father counted on conquered the journey? Am I to see your face, my son, and hear our voices in communion as before? I thought so, surely. Counting the months, I thought the time would come. My longing has not tricked me. I greet you now. How many lands behind you? How many seas? What blows and dangers, son? How much I feared the land of Libya might do you harm. Well, he got out of Libya okay, but didn't leave it very well behind him. Aeneas said, your ghost, your sad ghost, father, often before my mind, impelled me to the threshold of this place. My ships ride anchored in the Tuscan sea, but let me have your hand. Let me embrace you. Do not draw back. At this, his tears brimmed over and down his cheeks, and there he tried 3 times to throw his arms around his father's neck. 3 times the shade, untouched, slipped through his hands, weightless as wind and fugitive as dream. So even though his father has personality, has life in a way, he's still a disembodied, non-corporeal form. Cannot hold him. Aeneas now saw at the valley's end a grove standing apart, with stems and boughs of woodland rustling, and the stream of Lethe running past those peaceful glades. Hello, Aeneas. So, and everybody else who has joined us. So we hear of one more stream, one more river, and that is Lethe. Now, Lethe is a name that you may have heard in either in mythology or in video games. A lot of video games reference this, and we'll talk about it in just a second because he's about to explain more. He looks around, everything looks really pretty, blah, 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 blah. At the sudden vision, shivering, at a loss, Aeneas asked, which river flowed there, and what men were those in such a throng along the riverside? His father Anchises told him, souls for whom a second body is in store, their drink is water of Lethe, and it frees from care in long forgetfulness. For all this time I have so much desired to show you these, and tell you of them face to face, to take the roster of my children's children here, so you may feel with me more happiness at finding Italy. Must we imagine, father, there are souls that go from here aloft to upper heaven, and once more return to bodies dead weight? The poor souls, how can they crave our daylight so? My son, I'll tell you, not to leave you mystified, Anchises said, and took each point in order. No, Aeneas, at least not yet. We'll see what happens. So here we have Virgil as teacher. Aeneas comes to the underworld, talks to, yes, forgetfulness, exactly. And through Anchises is teaching, here's what happens in the underworld. And here's a little bit of a different take on one of the aspects of the underworld, which is going to lead to some very interesting foreshadowing in the upcoming pages. So we have souls. They're doing something weird, so Aeneas asks. And these are souls that are currently unborn. They're going to go back up, but before they go back up, they have to drink. And it's going to do something very, very specific. First, then, the sky and lands and sheets of water, the bright moon's globe, the Titan's sun and stars, are fed within by spirit, and a mind, infused through all the members of the world, makes one great living body of the mass. From spirit come the races of man and beast, the life of birds, odd creatures the deep sea contains beneath her sparkling surfaces, and fiery energy from a heavenly source belongs to the generative seeds of these. So far as they are not poisoned or clogged by mortal bodies, their free essence dimmed by earthiness and deathliness of flesh. So we've got spirits and energy. This makes them fear and crave, rejoice and grieve. Imprisoned in the darkness of the body, they cannot clearly see heaven's air. In fact, Even when life departs on the last day, not all the scourges of the body pass from the poor souls, not all distress of life. Inevitably, many malformations, growing together in mysterious ways, become inveterate. Therefore, they undergo the discipline of punishments and pay in penance for old sins. Some hang full length to the empty winds, for some the stain of wrong is washed by floods or burned away by fire. We suffer each his own shade. We are sent through wide Elysium, where a few abide in happy lands, till the long day, the round of time fulfilled, has worn our stains away, leaving the soul's heaven-sent perception clear, the fire from heaven pure. These other souls, when they have turned time's wheel 1,000 years, the god calls in a crowd to Lethe stream, that there unmemoried they may see again the heavens and wish re-entry into bodies. Okay, again, this is a little bit unique in the details here. What he's basically saying is, we've got, in the regular world, we have the material, the physical, we have bodies, we have earth, and then we have the spirit. We have spiritual beings, we have energy. Now, when spirits are confined to flesh, they're limited, but they experience the world in a different way. But at the same time, ailments of the flesh can affect the spirit, and the spirit takes that with it down to the underworld. And this applies not only to physical problems, but also things you do as a physical person. So anything you did wrong that you're being punished for, that's gonna follow you along into the underworld. Once you're in the underworld, as long as you're not a really terrible person and you're a famous person, essentially, you have 1,000 years to work off any of that old baggage, essentially, from your last life. And then, if you're chosen and you want to, you have the chance to go back to the world, get reincarnated, essentially, have a new body, a new chance at life. But even so, you need to be unmemoried. You have to have your memories removed, so you're not thinking back. So you're not thinking back to your old ways, but also because if you think back to your old ways, that means your spirit is still connected and still would suffer any of the past afflictions that you may have had from your physical body put onto your spiritual body. If that makes sense. Anchises paused. He drew both son and Sibyl into the middle of the murmuring throng, then picked out a green mound from which to view the souls as they came forward one by one, and to take note of faces. Oh, and so that's Lethe, the river. Literally, you drink from the river Lethe, you forget. That's the point there. Okay, so now we're going to see these souls who are waiting. They're in line to go back into the upper world, and because of fate and all of these other things, as we'll see, there's a lot of predestination. We know who these people are going to be once they go up to the world, and we know what their histories are going to be because Aeneas, of course, is living in historical time, talking about characters that will be real people in his own time. Come, he said, what glories follow Dardan generations in after years, and from Italian blood what famous children in your line will come, souls of the future living in our name. I shall tell clearly now, and in the telling teach you your destiny. That one you see, the young man leaning on a spear unarmed, has his allotted place nearest the light. He will be first to take the upper air, Silvius, a child with half Italian blood and an Alban name, your last born, whom your wife, Lavinia, late in your great age, will rear in forests to be king and father of kings. Peg Junk, yeah, the spiritual DMV line. I know, they're all just sort of milling about, waiting for their number to be called. So we have Silvius, who it just straight up says, this is going to be the last kid born to you from your wife Lavinia when you're old. So there you go. You can look forward to that. Through him our race will rule in Alba Longa. Next him is Procus, pride of the Trojan line, and Capys too, then Numitor, then one whose name restores you, Silvius Aeneas. Both in arms and piety your peer, if ever he shall come to reign in Alba. What men they are! And see their rugged forms with oak leaf crowns shading their brows. And then he goes on, and there's a big list of names. Blah, 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 blah. Then Romulus, fathered by Mars, will come to make himself his grandfather's companion. Romulus, reared by his mother, Ilia, in the bloodline of Assaracus. Do you see the double plume of Mars fixed on his crest? See how the father of the gods himself now marks him out with his own sign of honor? Look now, my son, under his auspices, illustrious Rome will bound her power with earth, her spirit with Olympus. She'll enclose her 7 hills with one great city wall, fortunate in the men she breeds. Just so Cybele mother, honored on Berecynthus, wearing her crown of towers, onward rides by chariot through the towns of Phrygia, in joy at having given birth to gods, and cherishing 100 grandsons, heaven dwellers with homes on high. So we have people who are soon to be born. So Aeneas, literally, Aeneas is one of Aeneas' sons, grandsons, and then a little bit down the way, we've got Romulus, who you probably have heard the name. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Romulus and Remus, and the actual founding of Rome, the city. Hey, Tiny Chris. Turn your 2 eyes this way and see this people, your own Romans. Here is Caesar, and all the line of Iulus, all who shall one day pass under the dome of the great sky. This is the man, this one, of whom so often you have heard the promise. Caesar Augustus, son of the deified, who shall bring once again an age of gold to Latium, to the land where Saturn reigned in early times. He will extend his power beyond the Garamonts and Indians, over far territories north and south of the zodiacal stars, the solar way, where Atlas, heaven-bearing, on his shoulder turns the night sphere, studded with burning stars. At that man's coming, even now the realms of Caspia and Maeotia tremble, warned by oracles, and the 7 mouths of Nile go dark with fear. The truth is, even Alcides never traversed so much of earth. I grant that he could shoot the hind with brazen hooves. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so he goes on about Caesar and Augustus here. And then we get some other early kings and early characters in Roman prehistory. So Numa, the king who will build early Roman laws. We get Tullus, Ancus, the Tarquin kings, Brutus, by whom the bundled fasces are regained. Consular power will be his, and his the pitiless axes. When his own 2 sons plot war against the city, he will call for the death penalty in freedom's name. Unhappy man, no matter how posterity may see these matters. Torquatus with his axe, Camillus. So essentially we're talking about Caesar and Pompey here. Sons, refrain! You must not blind your hearts to that enormity of civil war, turning against your country's very heart, her own vigor of manhood. You, above all, who trace your line from the immortals, you be first to spare us. Child of my own blood, throw away your sword! So weeping for future wars, future civil war and loss of life. Mummius, Paulus, Cato, the Scipios. So again, more actual historical people. Yeah, just a whole bunch of people. And then, so Anchises is listing off all these things, and he says, Roman, remember by your strength to rule earth's peoples, for your arts are to be these: to pacify, to impose the rule of law, to spare the conquered, and battle down the proud. So in Virgil's time, when we're having the first huge expanse of the Roman Empire under Augustus, those are the tenets of the Roman imperialism and expansion: to pacify, to impose the rule of law, to spare the conquered, and battle down the proud. And there too, that section started with Roman. So Anchises is calling Aeneas a Roman for the first time. Interesting. See there how Marcellus comes with spoils of the commander that he killed, how the man towers over everyone. Cavalry leader, he'll sustain the realm of Rome in hours of tumult, bringing to heel the Carthaginians, like Dido, and rebellious Gaul. And for the third time in our history, he'll dedicate an enemy general's arms to Father Romulus. Yeah, so they talk about Marcellus for a while. They move on. Talk about the Laurentines and Latinus. All right. And then wrapping it up. So raptly everywhere, father and son wandered the airy plain and viewed it all. After Anchises had conducted him to every region and had fired his love of glory in the years to come, he spoke of wars that he must fight, of Laurentines and of Latinus' city, then of how he might avoid or bear each toil to come. There are two gates of sleep, one said to be of horn, whereby the true shades pass with ease, the other all white ivory, a gleam without a flaw, and yet false dreams are sent through this one by the ghosts to the upper world. Anchises now, his last instructions given, took son and Sibyl there, and let them go by the ivory gate. Aeneas made his way straight to the ships to see his crews again, then sailed directly to Caieta's port. Bow anchors out, the sterns rest on the beach. So we have this epic undertaking in the underworld. Aeneas sees just so many people, sinners, dead people, Dido. Finally, he meets his father in Elysium, the happy place. His dad tells him what's up, and then we get this parade of future Italians and then Romans, including historical figures, and then they say bye-bye. But too, right there at the end, Anchises gives Aeneas the gift of prophecy for Aeneas. Here are the wars you're going to fight. Here are some of the adventures you're going to go on, and some tips and tricks for along the way. Now, of course, is Aeneas going to remember these things and always know what to do in the rest of this book? No, it's not that obvious and that direct. I wonder why we get Romulans but not Remus. Yeah, we'll talk about Romulus and Remus. We'll definitely get there. So that was the end of book 6, which is the Underworld book. Now we get to book 7, Juno, served by a Fury. And this book is pretty short. We'll start it. We're not going to get through the whole thing today. Let's see. So they sail again. There's always lots of sailing in these books, right? They pass the island of Circe, which is pretty cool. And there are animals there, roaring in the deep night, bristling boars and fenced-in bears, foaming in rage, and shapes of huge wolves howling. Men they had once been, but with her magic herbs, the cruel goddess dressed them in the form and pelt of brutes. So again, Circe is a witch. She is sort of a goddess. I mean, she is immortal. She's descended from other gods and goddesses, but again, Circe is like one of the best prototype witches there are. She makes potions. She has a magic wand. She turns men into animals. The works. Lives by herself in the wilderness. An island in this case. Yeah, specific fences for bears, yes. They keep going. Blah, 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 blah. Still, far offshore, Aeneas on the lookout sighted a mighty forest, a fair river, Tiber, cutting through, and at its mouth expelling eddies of clay-yellow water into the sea. Above it, all around, birds of myriad colors, birds at home on riverbank and channel, charmed the air with jargoning and flitting through the trees. Aeneas called, "Right rudder!" to the steersman, "Turn the prows to land!" and smiling, pulled for shade on the great river. And then Virgil interjects here, "Be with me, muse of all desire, Erato, while I call up the kings, the early times, how matters stood in the old lands of Latium, that day when the foreign soldiers breached upon Ausonia's shore, and the events that led to the first fight. Immortal one, bring all in memory to the singer's mind, for I must tell of wars to chill the blood. Ranked men in battle, kings by their own valor, driven to death. Etruria's cavalry, and all Hesperia mobilized in arms. A greater history opens before my eyes. A greater task awaits me." So we've seen this before in every epic poem. Typically at the very beginning, sometimes throughout, if the poet is about to undertake a really big new topic or move on to a big event, the poet, the author, will invoke the muse. Muse, talk through me. And which specific muse is invoked, it varies. It's not always the same one. But here, yes, he's asking the muse Erato, muse of all desire, to give him the energy, the strength, the beauty to tell these stories, talk about these characters. Where did the whole riding broomsticks come from? I'm not sure as far as witchcraft stories when the broomstick became became a thing. It's got to be a European, probably Eastern European invention. I don't know. That would be a good thing to look up. If any of you find it, or if any of you know, please share. So Slanesh, yeah. Oh, everything goes back to Slanesh. Let's see. All right, so we get King Latinus. Now, I'm sure you can imagine what we might get from his name. King Latinus, now grown old, had ruled his settled towns and countryside through years of peace. Tradition makes him a son of Faunus by a nymph, Marica of the Laurentines. It doesn't really matter who all these people are, but he's descendant of gods like everybody else. By fate, Latinus had no son excuse me, had no son or male descendant Death having taken one in early youth, a single daughter held that house's hopes. A girl now ripe for marriage, for a man. Oh, she is ready for a man. So this is King Latinus, who has one daughter, and that's it. At this point, at least. And many in broad Latium and Ausonia courted her, but the handsomest by far was Turnus, powerful heir of a great line. Nerdy Duck says, according to History Channel article, 1451, two illustrations appearing in the French poet Martin Lefranc's manuscript Le Champion des Dames, witches riding brooms. Interesting. Wow, late. 1451. Okay. Cool. So we now hear of a character named Turnus. Another sort of local king. He's the handsomest of all the people courting Latinus's daughter. Thus far, we don't get her name. We'll get it eventually. And he's powerful. He's the powerful heir of a great line. Latinus's queen pressed for their union, desiring him with passion for a son. But heavenly portents, odd things full of dread, stood in the way. There was a laurel tree deep in an inner courtyard of the palace, venerated for leafage, prized for years, having been found and dedicated there, so the tale went, to Phoebus by Latinus when he first built a strong point on the site. And from this laurel tree he gave his folk the name Laurentines. Here, for a wonder, bees in a thick swarm. Okay, blah, 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 blah. There are bees. They hang out in the tree. A soothsayer declared, in this we see a stranger's advent, and a body of men moving to the same spot from the same zone to take our fortress. Then came another sign. While the old king lit fires at the altars with a pure torch, the girl, Lavinia, with him, it seemed her long hair caught, her headdress caught in crackling flame. Her queenly tresses blazed, her jeweled crown blazed. Mantled then in smoke and russet light, she scattered divine fire throughout the house. No one could hold that sight anything but hair-raising, marvelous. And it was read by seers to mean the girl would have renowned and glorious days to come, but that she brought a great war on her people. Troubled by these strange happenings, the king sought out the oracle of his father Faunus, teller of destinies, to listen there in woodland by Albunia's high cascade and plashing holy spring. I don't know if that's a typo and it's missing an S, but it does say that it is plashing. That noblest wood that in cool dusk exhaled a brimstone vapor, blah, 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 blah. Many visions came before his eyes, and strangely on the air he heard their different voices and took part in colloquies of gods, ritually putting to the sword 100 sheep. That is quite a sacrifice. He lay on their piled fleeces. Then came a sudden voice from the innermost grove. Propose no Latin alliance for your daughter, son of mine. Distrust the bridal chamber now prepared. Men from abroad will come and be your sons by marriage. Blood so mingled lifts our names starward. Children of that stock will see all earth turned Latin at their feet. Governed by them, as far as on his rounds the sun looks down on ocean, east or west. So ran the oracle of Father Faunus in the still night, a warning that Latinus could not keep to himself, but far and wide report of it had reached Ausonian towns before the sons of Laomedon moored ship on the grassy riverside. Plashing is a gentle splash. Thank you, Nerdy Duck. Just a very, very gentle. Okay, so what do we have? What is going on here? Aeneas hasn't actually stepped foot on Italian soil, and already there's a great big tumult happening. So the local king is Latinus, right? That's where we're going to get Latin and everything else. He's an old dude. Seems like a good guy. He has no male heirs, no sons. He had one, he died. He has a daughter who is just ripe and ready for marriage. All the local dudes want her. Chief among them is Turnus, and like I said, another local king of a nearby community. Turnus is glorious, very masculine. We'll hear lots more about him coming up. Great warrior, son of kings. And Latinus's wife is very pro Turnus. She's like, yeah, I can see that guy marrying my daughter. Let's do that. Latinus himself is not quite sure. And then all of a sudden there are portents. There are omens. And what's interesting here is that Virgil, in the Aeneid so far, we've seen a couple of places where he's belittled fortune tellers. Or said, if you can believe them, they often just make stuff up, essentially. But here we have omens that are very, very clear. And we know, again, we as in the audience hearing the Aeneid or reading it, we know what's going to happen. And these omens are 100% true. So we've got a weird bee formation in a holy tree, and then the girl at night moving through the castle, the fortress. It looks like her hair catches fire and shines this crazy divine light on everything. And these omens are taken to mean there's a group of foreign men who are coming. They're gonna take over, and they're going to marry into this family, and then the family will rise up to be super famous all over the world. And again, as much as Virgil has said before, fortune tellers are garbage, here it's all right, it's all true. A stopwatch is right twice a day. There with his officers and princely son, Aeneas took repose beneath a tall tree's boughs. They made a feast, putting out on the grass hard wheaten cakes as platters for their meal, moved to do this by Jupiter himself. So this is important. Seems like a very minor detail, but this is actually crucially important. So just like trenchers in Europe, they have wheat cakes that are baked and dried that are so hard they use those as platters to put their food on. These banquet boards of Ceres they heaped up with country fruits. Now, as it happened, when all else was eaten, their neediness drove them to try their teeth on Ceres' platters. Boldly with hand and jaw they broke the crusted discs of prophecy, making short work of all the quartered loaves. "Look how we've devoured our tables even," Iulus playfully said, and said no more. For that remark, as soon as heard, had meant the end of wandering. Even as it fell from the speaker's lips, his father caught it, stopped the jesting there, struck by the work of heaven, and said at once, "A blessing on the land the fates have held in store for me, a blessing on our true gods of Troy. Here is our home, here is our fatherland. You know, my father Anchises once foretold this secret token. Now I remember of our destiny. He told me then, my son, when the time comes that hunger on a strange coast urges you, when food has failed, to eat your very tables, Then you may look for home. Be mindful of it, weary as you are, and turn your head to your first building there with moat and mound. Here we have felt that hunger. Here at last adversity awaited us, a limit set to our misfortunes. One and all at sunrise with high hearts, let us find out about this region and the people here and where their homes are, and blah, 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 blah. So yes, so very early on in this book, there was a prophecy that you are going to travel and you're going to have hardship and you're going to get to a place where you're so hungry that you eat your tables, and there you'll find an end to your journeying. And now they're eating. They have these weird, hard-baked plates. They finish all their food. They're like, oh, we're still hungry. Let's see if we can eat these. They break them up. I assume they probably dip them in water to make them a little bit more pliant. They eat them. They're joking around, laughing about it. And the son, Iulus, says the fateful, look how we've devoured our tables even. The prophecy, it has come true. Again, another fortune-telling event that is true and accurate and good in this case. So that's cool. So Aeneas announces, tip your cups to Jove, invoke my father Anchises in your prayers, put out the wine bowls of our feast again. He twined a leafy sprig into a garland round his head, then made his formal prayer to the glade spirit there, and to the earth, first of immortals, to the nymphs, the streams as yet unknown, to night and the rising stars of night, to Jove of Ida, to the mother goddess of Phrygia, Cybele, all ceremoniously, and then invoked his parents, one in heaven and one in Erebus. At this the Father Almighty in high air thundered 3 times out of a brilliant sky, and shook before their eyes with his own hand a cloud ablaze with gold and rays of light. Now through the Trojan companies quicksilver rumor went around. The day had come, for laying down the walls owed them by fate. And each outdid the other as they fell to feasting and rejoicing in the omen, setting the bowls and garlanding the wine. And we'll probably stop there for today. Ooh, good stuff coming up. Battles, love, hate, war. We are almost halfway through. Or maybe a little bit further. There's a bunch of indexes and stuff at the end of this book. And again, each book, each chapter, they do vary in length quite a bit. Somewhere. I think we're a little bit more than halfway. So that's cool. Yeah. Bloop, bloop, bloop. So hopefully you're enjoying this book. It's a little bit different from the Greek epic poems that we've looked at before. A little bit, a Roman spin on things, but definitely a lot of references, a lot of sort of honoring what Homer did. Homer in the Iliad and the Odyssey, taking its cues from those. So, like I said, this week should be normal stream times. I don't imagine. Oh my goodness. Yes. Look, like I said, I'm always open to tangents for sure. I don't think we're gonna have a Tuesday Doomsday stream tomorrow with Jessica. Her trip is wrapping up. I think she's gonna be too busy. But we'll probably return to that next week, and I don't know exactly what we'll be doing, but it'll be exciting because we did finish Children of Dune 2 weeks ago. If you missed it, we did finish. We actually finished the third book. We're not continuing with God Emperor of Dune. At least not right now. Maybe we'll come back to it some point in the future, but we're gonna do some other stuff. Find some fun things to do. So the next time I see everybody will be Wednesday morning for Warhammer. Continue working on the night. It's coming along. I went to a local hobby store and picked up a couple things. Some other kind of magnets and another glue I'm gonna need for some resin stuff coming up. So yeah, we'll talk about all that on Wednesday. The different God Emperor. I know there's so many God Emperors that we can talk about. And I guess that's it. Yeah, we'll have lots of stuff to talk about on Wednesday. Like I said, hopefully by Wednesday I'll have more of the Saturday plans locked down so I can announce and talk about what's coming up. But like I said, very, very cool stuff coming up. Hopefully it'll all work out for this Saturday. Otherwise, it'll be for upcoming Saturdays. We'll continue pushing that along. Oh yes, thank you, Nightbot, our fantastic guest, Danny, who's right here with us. I should probably update that. Cool. Well, I don't think we're gonna do any raiding today, so I'm just gonna say goodbye, and hopefully everybody has a good start to your week. I know we've got a lot of stuff happening. This is the last full week of school for Benjamin, and the next week is just like a wasted week, basically. So we have all that happening. We're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing during the summer with everybody. So yeah, exciting. Lots and lots of excitement. All right, I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, listening to me read and drone on about mythological things, and I'll be on the internets, and I'll see everybody right back here first thing Wednesday morning, and we will continue Warhammering. All right, goodbye everybody, have a great day.